What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Sav Show. My name is Savilian. I'm the host of the show. And today I'm bringing you a guest, a very special guest, and the first of this kind, I believe. So I reached out to Maloney from the 3000 podcast, and I said, hey, bro, would you love to jump on the podcast? And this is my first time interviewing another podcaster or kind of content creator like in this space. So it was a bit of a different one. He was super keen. We got the online chat going. His first time doing that, and I'm still relatively new to it, so it was cool. Figured out some kinks and then jumped into the show. So Maloney has his podcast called 3000 Podcasts, and it's a Melbourne-centric podcast. He's a guy who has grown up in and around the Melbourne music and nightclub scenes, DJing, skateboarding, hip-hop, graph, whatever. And a love of connecting with people has translated into this podcast. Maloney is a guy who loves Melbourne, obviously. He loves the city, loves the people. He loves so much about the scene and the subcultures that exist within Melbourne. And he has had some incredible guests. Like, he's only been running the podcast for like 15 months, but in that amount of time, he's racked up, a bunch, like 70 odd podcasts, a bunch of views on YouTube, some of them 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 per video. He's had Checkmate, Deets, Morns, MGH, Michelle Grace Hunter, Dielectrics, Little Jace, Fracture, Mogwai, Taunts, Scotty Hines, Greeley, Dave Barrett from Laundry, Lil Snow, Dylan J, and Viliani. The guy's had like an all-star cast of, some of Melbourne and Australia's best talent, underground talent. He gets great guests on there. He asks great questions. He has great conversations, and we ended up having a great conversation. So, we had a great show. We talked about like his background and growing up in the scene, and his DJing, and back at Laundry in the day, and how he had the idea for the podcast, and how he enjoys just talking to people, and how it's all going, and what he plans to do with it in the future. So, if you like Melbourne, if you like Melbourne people, if you like the Melbourne subcultures, even if you don't, even if you want to learn about it, Maloney is a guy who is very knowledgeable on all of those topics, and he's a guy that's doing something really cool, running a really cool brand, and someone who I really enjoyed having a conversation with. So, without further ado, how do you spell that? I need to check. Someone let me know in the comments. But yeah, if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the channel. Please share, comment, throw us a like, and make sure you do with Maloney as well. He'll be linked down below. But yeah, if you enjoy this podcast, please let us know. If I grow the audience of my channels, I can get cool guests like Maloney. I can get bigger guests on, and that's going to be better content for you guys. So without further ado, I bring you Maloney from the 3000 podcast. Please enjoy the chat. Let's go. Obviously, it's the 3000 podcast, Melbourne.
Yep.
Representing. What's your connection to Melbourne, and why is the 3K like an important part of your life?
It's important to me, man, because I've never lived anywhere else. I've been born in Melbourne. My birth certificate says Paran, not Melbourne, because I was born when they were still delivering kids at the Alfred Hospital there. So, man, I've lived here forever. And I'm a proud Melburnian, and I just think there's a lot of creative and interesting people here, and I wanted to hear their stories. And I didn't think anyone was kind of doing that, so I'm like, well, fuck, I'll do it myself.
How long ago did the idea for the podcast kind of spawn?
I had the idea a few years ago. I was a bit of a latecomer to the whole podcast thing, man. Like, I've loved skateboarding forever, and I got into the 9 Club a few years ago, and I really loved. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
What's the 9 Club?
The 9 Club is like an American, it's based in California, skateboard podcast that is run by skaters, and they just interview other skateboarders. So that was my first introduction into podcasting, like as a consumer. And I watched that, and I'm like, this is cool. We need to do something like that here in Melbourne. And I kind of thought, the skateboarding scene isn't that big. And then I kind of had this idea, well, what about we just talk to people from Melbourne in general and not put a ceiling on who you could talk to. Yeah. And that's basically where the idea came from, man.
Yeah. Was there always intention to have it? Because there's a lot of diverse kind of guests, but there is a fairly common thread, I guess, with like the music scene and hip hop specifically.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, where does that connection come from?
That is somewhat of a happy accident. I love that sort of stuff, but that was never really the original intention.
Okay.
So what happened was the first episode I had, I've come from a DJ background. I had a DJ friend on who had his own sort of show. So that was a good jumping off point. And then I had a burlesque performer. Then I had another DJ. Then I had a friend of mine who's a graffiti writer turned tattoo artist.
Yeah.
And then after that one, Mickey G, that was episode 4. It got traction. People loved it. People wanted more graffiti, more hip hop. And the show kind of chose its own direction.
Yeah.
My original intention was I would talk to everybody from very diverse backgrounds, but I soon learned after that we had found somewhat of a small but loyal audience. And I'm like, well, I love graffiti. I love tattoos. I love all this stuff that people want more of, hip hop, subcultures, all that sort of shit. So I'm like, okay, well, let's explore that direction. And 70, 80 episodes later, it seems to have chosen its own way.
Yeah. You found a nice little pocket.
For sure, man. And I think that I have, as someone who hasn't left Melbourne really for any longer than going overseas for a few months, I've been here for a long time. I've been around people and I know enough about it. And I've built, so the first like sort of 15 episodes were people that I just knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like,
you weren't trying too hard.
Yeah, I already had people that were happy to come on that I knew. And after that, then it kind of, yeah, like I said, people kind of pushed it in that direction, and I just let it go, man. Yeah.
I noticed that in your chat with Eka, like your local knowledge, like he would kind of mention a thing, and you're like, oh, that club, there's, you know, and you would kind of you would have little notes or ideas about each reference and kind of how to spin off it, and I'm like, that's a man with some fucking local ass knowledge.
When you never leave the area, man, it's always going to happen. But I've always been a social person that's been involved in some sort of stuff, you know, creatively or just in a social aspect forever. And man, I've been shooting podcasts at the pub without cameras and microphones for the last 25 years. You know what I mean? Like I've been having these conversations with people. The only difference is now it is documented and put out there for other people to see. I've always been talking like this to people, you know?
Yeah.
It's just now that we've put a camera in front of us.
So I suppose to be able to talk like that to people and build a network and build friendships and stuff like that over such a long period of time in these different scenes, you have to be a curious person. Like you have to be curious about human beings.
Yeah, and you want to, like, I've never been overly creative myself, but I've always been really interested in all that stuff. So because I haven't been like, okay, I'm going to focus on art and just painting. I've always been like, I like that. I'll learn a bit about that. I like music. I'll learn a bit about that. I like this form of dance. I'll learn a bit and I've kind of paid attention to a lot of this sort of stuff that in the end all sort of culminates into basically hip hop and what now is sort of underground-ish culture, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not that popular now, you know?
But it gives you a nice foundation to host this podcast and to have these conversations because of your interest in all of these different subcultures. They kind of all, you know, touch on one another at certain points in time.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
They cross over. Everything crosses over. And like, you know, I just got a text message from a friend with a graffiti background 10 minutes ago, and he had no idea I was even doing this podcast. He's like, dude, I just found out about this because I released a graffiti related episode yesterday. And like, yeah, man, everyone crosses over in Melbourne's like creative scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people here, but everybody crosses over in one way or another, which is really cool, you know?
Yeah, totally. So let's talk a bit about your, I guess your introduction and kind of like background in the music industry and, you know, DJing specifically. Like how did you get into that and like how deep did you get with it?
Man, I've come straight out of school. I wanted to play. I loved hip hop music, but house music was a bit more obtainable then. So I wanted to play house music. I was buying records, spent so much money on records as a kid, and I was like working as a nightclub promoter. Doesn't happen that much anymore, man. But in the early 2000s, there was a lot of nightclubs, there was a lot of uni nights and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of club promoters that were all just like 19-year-old kids, you know. So I got a job working in a few nightclubs, sort of being the guy who would keep this team of promoters in line.
Yeah.
And I would do that. And I did that for a year or so. And then I sort of slowly worked my own self into the DJ mix. And then I would DJ at these events as well. And I got to meet people that I still talk to today from that sort of small club scene, which sadly it doesn't really exist anymore, man. But that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And that was pretty much my first real kind of job outside of school at like 20 years old.
Okay. And how long did you kind of DJ for, and how often were you DJing? Were you doing it like every weekend?
Oh yeah, man. So my first big gig was like at Metro. I'd be there every Saturday night, and I would also manage the promotions team, stuff like that. And then other venues like that. And I was sort of trying to do the house music thing, and that was what was kind of very popular at that time. But I still loved hip hop, but there just wasn't much of a market to get regular paying weekly gigs playing the kind of music that I liked. So I did that for a bunch of time, man, until like 2008, I think, 2007. And then I got a real job for a bit. I got a real job for a little bit.
Happens to all of us.
For a couple of years, man, 2007 till I think like 2011. And then I wanted to get back into the DJing thing, and I jumped back in and started doing the commercial thing again. That was kind of it, man. It was only really a span of about 4 years where I've had a real job. Yeah,
okay. Well, and in that period of time, and then back into the DJing, and then that was kind of it from there.
Yeah, that's it, man. Like I knew so many people because I was doing it prior, and I also, man, I was happy to play. Look, to be honest, I played so many cheesy gigs and so much commercial shit music for a long time, and I definitely didn't like a lot of that music. But I was DJing 4 or 5 nights a week, and sometimes 3 gigs a night. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that was my job.
Yeah,
I was making money, man. I was making money, but with that comes a lot of downtime, hanging out at the pub during the day, you know, drinking a lot because that's part of it, you know, and that sort of thing, which I believe isn't sustainable for a long period of time. But I
often think about that, like with DJs sometimes, you know, like you could do, like there's for the right DJ and the right clubs and the, you know, the right setting and time and, you know, all that, you can be making like $2,000-$3,000 a night, and then maybe over 2 nights, But like you do like a Friday, Saturday, you make all this money, and then you got the whole week to just fuck around, you know.
There's different ways to approach it. Like the going rate is generally around about $100 an hour for just your generic-ish DJ that is playing these commercial places. And if you want to work really hard, and I know people that do, you can do 8 hours, 9 hours on a Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
But to do that and to be making that money, and we're talking not like mafia, we're talking just the people doing the club circuit.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to play house music here, play commercial music there, do a dinner set here. Yeah. Like you've got to take those opportunities when you can. Because those midweek gigs, like I used to play every Tuesday night at Blue Bar on Chapel Street. Okay. Those gigs don't exist anymore post-COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's probably a couple of places maybe in the whole of Melbourne where you're going to get paid to play on a Monday, Tuesday night, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of totally dried up. Your options are limited to the weekend now only, so you've got to cram that shit in.
Yeah, there's still Thursday. I'm sure there's still Wednesday, Thursday night gigs out there, and definitely Sunday ones, but like in this day and age, it's different, you know?
Yeah. So talk about you had a little experience or a little time DJing at Laundry. How was that?
Yeah, Laundry was good, man. I played some of the biggest and craziest, I think, nights of my small DJ career there. I got to support Z Trip, which was sick, with Leroy Get Busy. And man, we played I was there probably every week or every second week for a few years. But that was, like I said, part of the whole thing. It wasn't just Laundry. It would be Laundry, Blue Bar, Bimbos, Lucky Cock, the whole sort of, you'd have to do the rounds because they're just, to do a couple of hours here or there isn't going to be enough to pay the bills when you're full time, you know?
For sure. Yeah, and I suppose if you're doing those rounds and you're kind of getting out there, different nights, different venues, different groups of people, subcultures, whatever. You can meet a lot of interesting people and really build a network off of that.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. Like when you want to do that stuff, when you enjoy what you do, you start building a network without realizing you're building a network.
Totally.
And I think that's one thing that, people say, oh, you got to get out there and network. But if you enjoy going out and drinking and having fun and partying and seeing acts and doing all that, you're networking without realizing you're networking.
Totally. Yeah. I always think about, because I don't mind a party. I say that very generously. Yeah, I often go back to this line. I mean, I don't really want to highlight Drake at this current moment in time, but he has this line, nights I'll never forget with people, nights I won't remember with people I'll never forget. And I say that, I mean, probably this is the, an ableism in me or the alcoholism in me that makes me say that line. But I really, there is a big part of me that truly believes that, because, when I'm having those nights, those experiences, I'm usually with my best friends. I'm usually with family members. I'm usually with people that I'm going to like tell stories about, and like they're going to influence my art. They're going to influence my ability to connect with other people. They're going to influence my creativity, my content, all that. So, whilst there is like obviously a darker side and maybe a not so fun side to it, there's also this element where it's like, I'm learning how to be a person that can connect with other people as well.
For sure, man. And that is part of it. Like when you want to get into some sort of industry, go out there and just be a part of it. If you want to start DJing, get a job behind the bar. You know what I mean? Like eventually that dude that starts and opens the door at 9 o'clock won't be there. And when you say, I've got my headphones and my music here, the promoter will be like, okay,
you're ready to go.
You've been so that's the thing. Like, I think now when everybody's too scared to do things face to face and everyone hides behind the computer screen, it's important to get out there. If that's what you want to do, you know what I mean? Get out there and do stuff. Get into those bars and clubs or whatever, however you want to do. It's important to get out there and do it and make those connections.
Yeah, it's called hustling.
It is, I guess.
Showing your face, shaking hands. It's an important skill. It's an important skill.
For sure, man. Yeah. And some people are naturals at it. I like to think that I was naturally someone who wanted to go out and hang out with people and connect people and bring them together. So for me, it's like second nature. But for other people, that part of it's hard,
Absolutely. So I suppose that's a very natural progression then to go from, I love connecting with people, I love bringing people together, to I'm actually going to bring people together on this podcast, build this community of like-minded people talking about this beautiful city that we're representing.
That's it, man. And look, it is the podcast has been an awesome journey, but what I am probably the most proud about with it is that the Instagram is a community where people do talk and stuff. And that's the thing that, probably been the best thing to take out of it is that I've made heaps of new friends. I've brought people together. I've made people realize that this person knows that person and maybe we should hang out. And it's been super sick like that.
Yeah. I've actually noticed that on the Instagram. Like, you put up questions on the story and you got people responding and you're sharing the responses, and, you're constantly trying to engage with people, asking them for feedback, asking them for guests, asking them for, this and the other. And I think it really shows. I also think that people in Melbourne are very proud of the city. Like I feel like the tribalism that comes from AFL is something that kind of like binds everyone in the city somehow. I don't really understand it properly because I didn't grow up here, but I can kind of see how everyone is like. At the end of the day, it's like, it might be like, dogs versus, I don't know, what's another team? Fucking
Magpies?
Magpie. Yeah, it might be dogs versus magpies, but at the end of the day, we're Melburnian,
For sure.
Yeah,
that's it, man. Everyone's very proud to be from Melbourne, that is from here. And it's like, I don't know if there's too many other cities where people can live there for like 18 months and then say, nah, man, this is where I'm from. And I've spoken to heaps of people on this show, whether they're from England, whether they're from Sydney or wherever, but they come here and they're like, yeah, this is where I was supposed to be, because it just is different to other cities, you know?
Totally. What do you think that is?
Well, I think the arts culture, I think it's accepting. Look, obviously, graffiti is a huge thing, and I like here, and I think a lot of people don't really, from other cities. I just don't know if it has the culture that it has here. Like everybody here, especially when I was growing up, had a word and they would scribble on stuff, and that's a huge part of it. And I think that leads to more creative pursuits and endeavors. You know what I mean? Like I think that we really are rooted in that, and that whole thing is maybe it comes back to the rebellious side, and I think more rebellious people are more creative people, free thinkers. I don't know, man. A lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know how long the city. This is a bit of a theory that I have, but just because of the layout of the city as well, like especially in the city center, it's just kind of laid out very nicely, and the trams kind of make it's gridded. The trams make everything very accessible. And it feels like one thing. Like it has its obviously it has its pockets within that one thing, but it feels very much like one thing. Whereas like I don't know, like I haven't been to every city in the world, but I've been to like, you know, I go to Brisbane, I go to Sydney. I'm from kind of like just north of Sydney, but I spent a lot of my youth in Sydney, and it just feels so like disconnected. It's like
Sydney's totally different feel, man. So it feels totally different in every capacity. The pubs feel different. The landscape's different because it's got hills and stuff. Like here, like you said, everything's accessible. Melbourne's got the largest tram network in the world, and that also helps people connect. You can jump on one tram. Every single tram goes to the city, bar the one that goes down Temple Street. So you can jump on a tram. You can be in the city. Then from the city, you can go anywhere else. Yeah. So a lot of places have bus networks. I think buses suck personally. We've got trams. It makes it feel different. You can jump on it. Look, as a kid growing up, I didn't have like a big backyard or anything, but we would jump on the tram and we'd be in the city, and that was like our backyard, man. You could be in the city in like 4 stops, and you know, you can go wherever you want.
I think there's something very nostalgic about the trams as well. Like, you know, you could be 1 second on the side of the road just chilling, and then another second later, you're on this big fucking moving piece of metal that's going to take you to somewhere that you desire. I don't know that buses have that potential too, but I don't know. There's something about trams.
No, trams are sick, man. And look, if you skateboard, then you can you can't ride a bike and jump on a tram, but you can have a skateboard and jump on a tram. So that pushed that whole culture as well, where you can go, we can just catch a tram here, we can go to this place to skate, we can catch a tram there. Yeah. And that sort of stuff that I think other cities, they don't have that, which makes, for the culture that I like, it makes it cool, you know?
And it definitely makes it, you know, accessible, makes it warm, it makes it like somewhere that, you know, if you're into that kind of stuff, like you gravitate toward it.
For sure, man. I think a lot of people that grow up in other places all around Australia, when they want to do something creatively or they want to experience the big smoke, they think, do I go to Melbourne or Sydney? And no disrespect to Sydney, but I think that more creative people and more people that are interested in that kind of culture side of it come to Melbourne, because I think that Melbourne's got that locked down a little bit better than maybe Sydney does. Sydney's more business oriented. Feels like it's a bit more dog eat dog. I don't know, man. It's got that's the way it feels. Yeah. Well, climate wise, it's probably warmer, but
not climate wise. The people.
Yeah, it's not, man. Look, Sydney's cool, and I've been there a bunch of times, but I would never live in Sydney, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what sold it for me. So, like, I grew up in a place called the Central Coast of New South Wales, which is about an hour north of Sydney. But I've lived in Sydney, like in multiple suburbs, probably like 10 years of my life in total. So I know Sydney very, very well. But what sold it for me was because I rap as well, like I make hip hop music. Me and my brother rap, and so we actually went down to do a show, and this happened within like it was maybe like a week apart. But I remember there was a night out where I went out in Sydney, and I walked down George Street, the middle of Sydney, right near Central Station, and every single one of the bins were like overflowing. There was rubbish literally everywhere. Like there was piled up rubbish on the street, right? And then we went to Melbourne to play a show at Laundry Bar, my first ever time playing out of the state. And we left the venue at like maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever it was, and we're walking through Fitzroy, and the garbage guys were collecting trash and emptying the bins so that people could go out, party, and then put their rubbish away adequately. So it wasn't like this like total fucking, trash bag kind of like street, dust up.
I'm sure there's plenty of trash bags on the street anyway, though.
Yeah, 100%. But I might have been one of them. But it's like what resonated to me was Melbourne cared about the nighttime economy, and the nighttime economy equals creatives, equals artists, equals people that are in those subcultures. So when I saw that, I was like, man, this place actually cares about this stuff.
And there's probably also an element that Fitzroy is now a very gentrified area, so the residents would be like complaining because I mean. But totally. Let's take the lead with that, and let's make sure that the Garbos come at midnight on a Saturday, so that people don't complain on a Sunday.
100%. Yeah. It was proactive. So you've been running 3K podcast now for how long?
Just over 12 months, man. I think I started in March last year. So what's that? 15 months.
Dude, that's an epic fucking 15 months. Well done.
Yeah. I had the plan to try and do 52 episodes in 52 weeks.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that plan until after I started. So I'm like, I had to put a few double episode weeks in there towards the end. But to start with, like I was shooting in a professional studio in the city, which is very expensive. So I spent a lot of money there, and those guys are awesome. But it was just not sustainable to keep doing that, especially when I spend a lot of time on it. B, it's got no revenue way of making money. So I'm like, how can I continue this without having those overheads? So I just bought all the shit and tried to sort of start my own studio, man. And once I did that, it was a lot easier. It was closer to my home. I had the runs on the board with the caliber of guests, I think, in the first 25 episodes that people were willing to come down to where I am, which is it's on the Mornington Peninsula, like sort of like an hour out of Melbourne. It's still technically Melbourne, but like it's an hour out of the CBD.
Yeah.
So like, the timing was kind of right. People were keen to come here. By this stage, people were hitting me up to come on. The Instagram was building, and it kind of felt like it was the right time. So for the last sort of 50 episodes, I didn't even think about till now. Yeah, this will be the 50th episode I've shot here. Will come out next week. There you go.
Wow, amazing! Congratulations.
Oh, geez, man.
What are some highlights so far? What are some moments or conversations or people that kind of stand out?
So many. Like Mickey G, aka Jumble, who's a mate of mine. His episode number 4, where we talk about graffiti, and he talks so candidly about that changed the direction, as we touched on earlier, the whole direction of the podcast, and made it go in a direction that I'm happy it did, but I didn't know it was going to happen. So that one is definitely right up there. And I dare say that he will be the first returning guest that I get on eventually. But I don't want to bring other guests back until I've done like 100. And then I'm like, I feel like I could double up. I don't want to do that straight away. And then a few episodes after him, I had Jaff Curtis, who's a legendary Melbourne skater. He's big in the hip hop scene as well, but I don't know. You're probably too young to remember, man. But blank clothing was a big deal. Like
no idea.
In Melbourne, it was like blank clothing were like hoodies, and like it was a skater owned Melbourne brand, and he was one of their premier skaters. And Jeff is a legend. Yeah. And I wanted to get him on. I got him on, and I knew him, but I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally. Yep. And that was the first episode where I sat down and spoke to someone who wasn't one of my friends, which was a totally new experience for myself, and a new sort of highlight for the show.
Yeah.
And
was that daunting?
It was, man. It really was. It was a really heavy show because he had his issues with cancer. He'd lost his partner very tragically and very fast in the 12 months, and he hadn't really been online, and people were worried about him. So the fact that he chose to come on, be so honest, talk about things like that, and that's deep, man, to talk about the tragic passing of your partner to with someone who you don't really know.
Yeah.
That was a huge moment for him and me, but I think like that proved to myself that I could hold down these conversations. And then man, now Jaff and I text, he's going to come on again. You know, he sent me a message after that saying, man, that was really helpful in my healing and you've won a friend for life. And that, like, you know, I almost started to cry, man. Like that was huge for me.
That would have been
like,
massive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we still talk and he's a legend. I'll get him on. But like that, when that happened, I'm like, it's hard to go past that one because obviously it was really hard for him. It was hard for myself, but like that episode, I think really made me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And another dude texted me after that because Jaff had his issues with bowel cancer. And he said, man, after watching that episode, I've got a history of bowel cancer in the family. That pushed me to go and get checked. So when I got that, I'm like, wow, that's huge as well. So
special.
Yeah, man. I think that one's going to be hard to get past just because it was, for all those reasons.
I think it actually, you know, even though it wasn't a friend or whatever, it actually probably works out for the better because he doesn't have to rehash anything. It's like a clean slate, and he can just be like totally open and vulnerable and tell you exactly where he's at and what he's thinking without you needing or wanting to have any preconceived ideas. So it kind of works out nicely where he can just kind of get on there, be vulnerable, and it ends up being quite cathartic, which it sounds like it was. That's cool.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was. And it's awesome to see him and see his progress and where he's got from you know, a dark time to somewhere where he's a lot happier now. He's back skateboarding. Man, check out his Instagram. He does some of the steeziest like front side flips and stuff. And Jaff, you know, he's older than me, man. So he'd be almost pushing 50 and he's still skating with some amazing style.
Still
so
shredding.
It's cool he is for sure, man. So it's cool to see that sort of stuff. And that episode, I think I hold that one pretty dear to my heart, you know?
Yeah, for good reason. I think that's a great highlight. So what would you say, or how would you say, you know, apart from the, you know, the physical elements of it, you know, moving studio, buying your own gear, really kind of setting it up in that way, apart from that kind of stuff, how would you say that the podcast has evolved in terms of like, you know, guess your kind of flow of the conversation, what kind of questions, you know, stuff like that.
Man, to be honest, I don't like when you sent me the invite to this, you had questions sort of mapped out and stuff. I'm like very, like we were talking about earlier, fly by the seat of your pants. I don't really write questions. I do a bit of research on the person and I try and have the most organic conversation and keep it flowing in a linear manner as I can. So my sort of idea is you chat, let them go on their tangents and then try and bring them back to that timeline. So that's just, first of all, I don't really think about the questions too much. And I think that works for me. But also the other factor is if I'm shooting 3 episodes a week, man, I can't do 4 hours of preparation for each episode. Like it's just too time consuming. But it seems to be kind of working. In the other aspects of how the show's evolved, it's definitely gone down a much more local hip hop route, which is totally cool. People are messaging me saying we've got this release coming, or I really want to talk about this, which is also cool. So I've kind of, and people are asking me to do things outside of the podcast, which is cool. So it's that seems to have taken its own direction, which, you know, there wasn't any live rapping happening in the other studio. There wasn't any live DJ sets. There wasn't any of that stuff. So now that I've got my own space and I'm not paying $150 an hour to record something, I've got the ability to do that sort of stuff, which feeds into more of what I'm interested in anyway. But I don't want it just to be a hip hop podcast. I don't want it just to be about graffiti, skating and all that sort of subcultures. I want to talk to people about advertising. I want to talk to people about fucking all sorts of different things. But the goal is, I think, is to come back to that core because that's where it's at, and then use this platform to then talk to other people as well. So, you know, maybe I'll do it a Melbourne rapper, then maybe I'll do a skateboarder, then maybe I'll talk to someone who is just fucking a makeup influencer. I don't know if they've got a cool story, whatever, So I'm happy to play around, but I think the core audience will come back to sort of what people know it for.
Totally. And I think if you can frame those, so it's like two things. One, if you can be, continue to be a great host and be curious and ask good questions and have a good flowing conversation. And then if you can frame it in a way that kind of, might add value or interest to your core audience, there's nothing stopping you from, going really left of field and kind of, getting anyone from any walk of life in Melbourne who has an interesting story. Because at the end of the day, that's all the podcast is: conversations, interesting stories.
100%, man. And that's what I want to do more. I want to look. I love the direction it's at, and I think I'll have no shortage of people that are going to be willing to come on and talk from a hip hop, graffiti, counterculture, underground perspective. But I want to push it a little bit further as well. And I've got people that are professionals in other fields that I'd love to have a chat with because I know they've got cool stories. But there always needs to be a hook. That's the thing. Like, you need to have a hook. People need, even if they're not overly well known, there has to be a hook. I'll get people message me all the time like, hey, I've got heaps of cool stories about when I grew up. And I'm like, yeah, but that's cool. But if no one knows who you are, or if you don't have a hook, if you did, that's just a story. Like, you know what I mean?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. It needs to be grounded in something, or there needs to be something else that is coming on. Are they about to launch something big? Have they had all this and lost it all? There's got to be some kind of hook. Just having interesting stories, I feel like isn't really enough. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting stories might be good for the reels or might be good for the little 30-second clips, but for the whole podcast, it needs to be like, what's the payoff? Where are we going with this?
100%, man. And I feel like there is so much of that content out there. And I think some of the even really large podcasts that probably have, a lot of financial backing, I don't know how many people are actually sitting there and watching that for 2 hours. I think a lot of it is done just for these little reels and snippets, and people just want it for the Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from the other school of thought where I want the Instagram and the socials to push people to the actual long form chats and not the other way around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely have noticed a trend toward that. And, I was even thinking, the other day I was thinking about thumbnails, for example, and attention grabbing, and you've got to have the first 10, 20 seconds be like this, blah, 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 like, look at this, this is what we're going to get at the payoff. And the whole science behind that, which is, where content and YouTube and, Instagram, TikTok, that's where all that is, and that's fine. But what's the thought behind that? The thought behind that is we don't care enough to sit through something.
For sure, man, 100%. And that's the thing. I don't like to think too much about that attention grabbing stuff, and all that sort of thing, because at the end of the day, that is probably likely going to change, and Instagram will fucking change the way that they push these algorithms. Yeah. So there's different schools of thought. I put up a reel last week of Viliani, Melbourne MC, rapping, and I let the whole intro play. And then some people are like, man, you're not grabbing enough attention from the start. But that's how it is. If people don't, or are people going to look at that and go, I didn't even hear a rap yet. I'm going to click on that reel and watch it. I don't know. So I'm just doing it the way that we're doing it. Like, I'm not going to change to try and buy into the algorithm. There's a few things that I won't do. Like, I won't spam or, do stupid shit, but I'm just going to keep doing it the way that I think works. And so far, it's working to an extent. Like, we've grown from, 15 months ago, I had one follower, which was my other account. You know what I mean? Like, so we've grown it to 4,200 people at the moment. Yeah, it was me and my missus and probably the first guest I had on. And that was it, man. And so I don't know, I don't know too much about it, but if the organic growth has happened to over 4,000 people in that time, then I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't think.
Totally. And the thing is, with that mindset and that, taking that lane or taking that approach, there's longevity in it, because you're not you're going to continue to show up because you enjoy doing it, not because someone's asking you to do it, not because you want the numbers, the whatever. You're doing it because it's like you're passionate about it, and there's always going to be longevity in that. It's what I was. Sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, if I won the lottery, I would still do this. This is what I would do. I would have a better studio. I'd have somebody who could do all the shit that I don't want to do, but this is what I'd be doing, and I'd retire just doing that, man. So I think if that's my mindset on it, then it can't be bad,
Yeah. Well, you also can't really lose because
you can financially.
Yeah,
that's a different story.
Yeah, but we got to give up something somewhere somehow. And that's a risk we take. But I think, if that's the mindset and that's the mentality, you can't lose you can't lose the content game because you're going to be happy no matter what.
For sure, man. And look, for people like yourself and myself, right, who are constantly talking to people, we have a tiny little cheat code in this Instagram or socials game because we always have people we can collaborate with, right?
Totally.
Which exposes your audience to them. Now, everyone else doesn't necessarily have that luxury. So let's make the most of that and make sure you can get as many collaborators on as possible.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away, but if I'm doing 2 episodes a week, and that person has 5,000 followers and that person has 2,000, then there's 7,000 people that you've collaborated with that week potentially. And sure, there's audience crossover, but then there also may not be, and that's going to continue your growth.
Yeah, very smart. The thing I was kind of mentioning at the beginning, the subprime audience or subprime.
So that's new to me. I've never heard that.
Yeah, so this guy, I was listening to his podcast last night, and he was talking about you don't want to be optimizing for a subprime audience because
can you break that down for me who doesn't get the buzzwords? What does that mean? What does that mean?
So remember 2008, the global financial crisis, right? Yep. One of the main reasons that happened is because all these real estate guys were selling these subprime mortgages to the banks, and what that meant was they were taking, like, say you when you're going for a mortgage, they kind of risk assess you and they rate you. You're either like an A+, which means you've got a great job, stable, you're going to pay the mortgage no matter what. B is like, you got a great mortgage, but there's a few things going on, you might default. C is like, very good chance of defaulting, and then it kind of goes down like that. What they would do is they would take the bottom like tranche of mortgage people who are like essentially going to default on their mortgages, and they'd stack them in this one big thing, and they would sell that to the bank with like a certain risk attached to it, because the bank was like, they were greedy, they wanted to make a lot of money. They were like, this is never going to fail because the housing boom is never going to stop. So basically they created this foundation of this very faulty system because it was done with like the wrong intentions. Essentially, they created this faulty foundation, and eventually the whole thing came crashing down. Global financial crisis, right? Trillions of dollars lost, people died, lost houses, whatever. The idea this guy was talking about is, right now, the attention game, people are creating subprime audiences because they're doing catchy headings, they're doing catchy, thumbnails,
and the content's not actually there. Yeah.
The content's not actually there, and you don't actually care about the content. You're doing it to build an audience of people that you probably don't even want. 12 or 13-year-olds who just want to click on a fucking TikTok or whatever. So you're doing the attention grabbing thing because you want to build fame, but you're not building a deep connection with your audience. So that's
a good core audience. No, that totally makes sense, man. And then if that is right, then we're going to have some sort of content bubble that bursts and
100%.
Everything resets.
100%. And the people who have a core audience of genuine people that like are with them for the ride, they're going to remain, and everything else is going to fall down.
For sure. No, I totally, that makes total sense, man. I agree with that because I think that there's enough of these bullshit kind of attention grabbing, content out there. Like, there's so many podcasts, little clips that pop up on socials where they're just people setting each other up for jokes like it's FM radio. And that's what I don't like about the radio. And that's why I don't listen to commercial radio. So I don't want to consume that in the new media, the new way, the new medium which is podcasting. I don't want to consume that. I want to learn some stuff. I want people to be able to tell their stories. All this shit that we didn't have 15 years ago before this platform, these platforms existed.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just say that George Mack on Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom is where I got the reference. If anyone wants to go check it out, I'll link it below.
I'll check that out, yeah.
Before you mentioned if you won the lotto, you would probably give some of the shittier tasks to someone else. What are those? What are the ones that are like, time consuming? You don't love it. No,
man. There's a lot. Look, I've
tedious.
The audio side of this stuff, it was easy because I've come from a DJ MC kind of background where I've always used microphones and stuff like that. So that wasn't too bad. The AV side of it, or like the visual side of it, is different. I don't edit. I don't really know how to edit. I'd love somebody to sit here and edit, make sure all the equipment was good, make sure that the fridge is stocked with beer and water. Like just some
basic shit. Yeah.
There's some basic stuff, but also, look, I don't mind doing the socials, but editing the reels, and there's a lot of just little stuff that if I did win the lottery and I'd have a nice studio, probably a nice place for people to kick back. Like it's okay where people kick back, but they can't talk when we're shooting, so it'd be nice to have a bit of a soundproof space, you know what I mean? Yeah. That sort of thing. But man, look, it's not too bad. I just would like somebody, if I had the money, to do those things so I could focus on the chats and booking the guests. I wouldn't even want anyone to book the guests myself. I'd still want to do that myself because I think that's really important to the quality control and to the direction that I want to take it. Like I don't want anyone else's input in that capacity. It's just the menial task,
Yeah, totally. And there's a lot of them. And I think people really underestimate.
Yeah, for sure, man. Look, I had Wayne Lim, and I don't know if you know the Future History podcast. He's doing amazing stuff talking to Melbourne creative people. Man, he puts in 2 to 3 days per episode. He meets with the guests beforehand. He does all his preparation. He does the editing and all this sort of stuff, and that's amazing. But he, like myself, you wouldn't want someone else to do that. That's all part of the whole thing. So you get the
get the reps in.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? So it's pretty funny because, people do really underestimate it, and they go. I think everyone thinks that they have an idea in their head that they could turn into a podcast, or there's a future, the Family Guy episode where they're all sitting around at the table, and the guys are like, oh man, we're so funny and smart. We should start a podcast. And then the next minute they've got the podcast gear and they're talking, and all of a sudden it just kind of turns into this thing that they never really expected, and they just end up hating the idea in the end because it's there's so much to it. It's not just coming up with an idea. It's not talking into a microphone. There's a lot of layers.
And that's, man, when I first said I was going to do this, a lot of people thought, I think, that I was going to sit there and have one of those cheesy ones where you just bounce off each other and read quotes off the internet, which I think that stuff is so fucking tacky and so it's just that kind of content is just I don't like it at all. I want to talk to people who are interesting and hear their stories. There is so much crap out there in that space, which just means that there is good content out there, but you got to dig for it. You got to find it. And it's all being weighed down by all this sort of cheesy shit. No one cares if you and your mates are funny. No one unless you're famous or you have a following or you've accomplished something, no one cares about you and your mates laughing about inside jokes. That's not funny to an audience. No one gets that.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking to somebody that I know, I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Oh yeah, I saw you at this place, but I'm not going to go on a tangent talking about stuff that the audience isn't going to get, because at the end of the day, this isn't for me. It's for hopefully people to take something away from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's credibility in that, and again that leads to the longevity because every single episode is a conversation that you might be able to either you, the guest, or the listener can take something from. Yeah,
and man, look, with what we're doing, it's something that will stay on the internet hopefully for a long time. So there could be, like we mentioned, hopefully. We mentioned O1 before, who's obviously a young, very driven individual.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that people could come back in 10 years' time when he has made this, he's playing on these epic stages he envisions, and look at where he was then. Like totally. This sort of people make a lot of stuff that is relative to right now, and that's just going to clog up the fucking internet in the future. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it'd be cool to come back to those. Actually, that's the main reason that I started podcasting, is to like, it was kind of to share my story for myself. I wanted to, I think about like, you know how people, like some parents, they'll create an Instagram page for their child from birth so that they can have like a catalog of their entire life, so that they can look at, when they're older or whatever. I kind of, for me, my podcast started off as that, something where I could just like catalog my life, catalog my stories, catalog my thoughts, my journey, the twists and turns, talk about the good stuff, talk about the bad stuff, talk about what I'm up to, talk about what I'm planning. There's heaps of fuck ups. There's heaps of like, things that I planned to do, things that I was, committing to that didn't eventuate. But it's all there, and it's all real, and it's cool to see. Like, I love it.
And it'll be there forever, man.
Yeah.
The servers permitting.
Yeah. Well, World War III also permitting.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Also, I don't know. This is a bit of a tangent, but they're having the debate right now, the presidential debate.
Yeah.
And my brother sent me some videos, like, because he's watching it. He sent me some videos of Sleepy Joe, and he just honestly just looks like he's done. Like, there's no.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying in a group chat that I'm in, but I haven't been able to check it out, man.
Yeah, it looks like there's not a human kind of cell left in his body. It's just like a carcass.
Well, isn't he like 87 or something? That's like however old he is.
Yeah, he's pretty old. I don't think it's 87. I think it's like early 80s, but it's he's a very old 82 or whatever it is.
And that's too old to put somebody in charge of something like a whole fucking huge superpower of a country.
Well, the entire planet essentially is dictated on the whims and direction of the US kind of thing, and he's not the guy to be doing it. All right,
but without getting too conspiratorial, maybe they like the fact that he can't really, make decisions on his own accord. That might
massively.
I don't know.
No. That would be 100% part of why he is in the position he is right now, because he's controllable.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a couple more questions, and then we'll fuck right off. So at the beginning we talked about hip hop. Who are some of the MCs that you're a fan of now, or that you see having like a big future, I guess?
Man, I've had heaps of awesome MCs come through, like amazing ones, and more to come. From a personal perspective, meeting 01 the other day, I think that there is no one out there that I've come across that is more driven and motivated. So I think that is going to play a huge part. He's one to definitely keep an eye on. He's also got, some good people behind him.
Yeah.
The Melbourne scene is or the Australian hip hop scene. The scene's good. The market isn't necessarily there. So that's the hard thing. Yeah. So for anybody to really blow up, they need to find that market overseas, whether it's the UK or the US or Canada or something, man. So I don't know. It's you've got to think, when you think about that sort of stuff, you've got to think who has crossover potential. Someone like Mawns, who he's just dropped a new album and he's a legend. He's been on the show. But he's so Melbourne would that translate? Would that blow up? Could that cross over into another audience? I don't think so. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think so, but he can fucking spit.
Exactly, man. And I think that's the difference. And what has happened here post, Obese Records, post, 360 and Cursor battles, and now the Aussie hip hop scene is in a different space, and we're kind of happy for it to be where it is. The people don't have these ideas that I am going to blow up as much as they previously did, because we've just become accustomed to it. And when you look at the MCs that do make it on a really large scale, it generally doesn't have a lot of longevity, except for a couple, like a handful,
Yeah, we don't have the I was listening to, I think DT was on your podcast talking about like the West Coast and how you could just tour up and down the West Coast for like 3 months. Yeah, we just don't have that. It's like if you want to get on your grind and like go play shows, that's not going to be fucking cheap. To build an audience like that is not
sure,
cheap.
Man. It's not, man. But look, like, so there's 27 million people in Australia, right?
Yeah.
You got to think how many of those people are hip hop consuming fans. Like, and I know it's a big genre, but maybe you say 10% of them, right?
Yeah.
So that gives you with about 2.5 million people. Now, out of that 2.5 million people, how many of those hip hop fans consume local Australian rap? Probably about, I'd say, 30% of them. So that brings your percentage down again. Now, how many of those people are going to seek out and find your music with all the rest of that other music that's there in this day and age where we're fucking overloaded with content? So when you break it all down like that, man, the only way to make it is overseas, I think, to really be sustainable. There, of course, people are doing it here, but they're the 1% chilling it. Nerve is an amazing producer and a rapper, but he's multifaceted, so he's doing his own thing as well.
Yeah.
The actual core audience here, man, I just don't think we're a big enough place. And Australians are that down with it, which means it's cool, which means it always stays underground. And a resurgence in Aussie rap like we saw in the, mid 2000s to 2015, I think is probably a long way away,
Totally. I think the other option though is the posse shot route, which is like, really core fan base, direct to the streets, kind of like, very close-knit community, and kind 100%. Of building the, it's the 1,000 true fan model. 1,000 people that can like buy your merch every time you drop, buy your record every time you drop. That's I think that's the most possible way to do it and has the most longevity.
For sure, but that is a hard thing in itself, man.
It's a slog,
I'm sure Carney is working overtime, and he's probably he comes across like, it's all happening, but I'm sure they've got a 3-year plan, and we're already working on the hoodies for this time in winter, and I'm sure all that stuff would be happening. And for a lot of these artists that have got that sort of mentality, they make it look easy, but there'd be a lot of work involved in that, man.
Totally.
Lot,
Oh, the hourly rate wouldn't be great.
Exactly. And that's when you break it down to something like that. So like you'd have to look, you've got to love what you do. But, I'm sure that those guys still turn up to work and go into the studio and put it, you know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff. People that think that it's just going to happen, I think are pretty delusional, man. Like you have to put in the work. Like, I put in so many hours into this with no financial gain, but if you enjoy what you do, then you just keep doing it, and then you're not really working, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think the so you mentioned Eka. Was there anyone else that you kind of like that you're like, I think they could build something, not necessarily like blow up overseas, but you kind of like the direction they're going?
Oh man, there's heaps of MCs. Like, there's shitloads of them. The thing is, like I said, the market is small, but we're happy and we're content here with that. So like, let's just go and support these smaller gigs, Breaking Bread, the Down Under Cyphers, all this sort of stuff. The Get Down, like Deets, he does a great job. Deets, man, he does a great job of getting people from different styles of hip hop together. You know what I mean? Like, man, there's a zillion rappers out there. Like, I'd love to see, and this is probably like one that people say often, but I'd like to see, like everyone would, Alex Jones come back and actually release some music. I think out of anybody that we've got in Australia besides like your people that have kind of really tipped over, like, someone like Chillin' It, who's obviously got commercial radio play and done his whole thing. I think someone like Alex Jones could be that guy who goes to the UK and just blows people away with his lyrical ability and his penmanship. It's a shame that he isn't releasing stuff at the moment, but that is the guy, I think, someone like that who could take it to the next level. Like, sure, we've had 1-4 and all that sort of thing. I feel like as a solo artist, someone like him would be the guy that could do it,
Yeah. I think branding is pretty important though. Like, you've got to be able to build a community. You've got to have like something to wrap people around, because I think it is very hard. Like, just being a good rapper you know, there's a lot of good rappers. So it's like, you know.
And every day there's going to be more that come out on the internet. It is. Branding and personal brands is a huge thing.
Yeah.
The people that understand that more than others, that's what the Posse Shot guys do amazingly.
Yeah.
Whether people understand it or not, they own a clothing label. That's what they own. They don't as much own a group. You know, it's a clothing label because the way they monetize it is by selling product, you know?
Totally.
And so and look, Tyler, the creator, I think he pioneered that with his selling socks and shit with the Odd Future stuff.
Yeah.
That's when people aren't paying for music. If you look at the amount of money people would make from streams, it would be nothing.
Pittance.
So you have to it would be nothing. So you'd have to look at how you can then, if it is going to be financially, how you could make some money out of it. And that's it. Building the brand is the way to do it.
I actually think, sorry, go.
No, that's it, man. You go.
Yeah, I think All Day did a really good job of that. Like I remember back in the day, like he was one of the first guys who's like, I would go to his big cartel and there would be like 3 different designs of shirts for every single song that he'd released. And every single time he was going to drop a song, you'd have to go to the big cartel to like, you know, get the download or whatever. And then there'd be an opportunity to buy a shirt with it. I think he really nailed that model. And it was almost like he was making the music to sell the shirts.
For sure. And that's almost, well, I'm sure he wanted to make the art, but like he has also, man, he's been a Triple J darling since day one, man.
Yeah.
He has always had that support, which is like, you know, that sort of stuff is, you can't buy that kind of exposure.
Yeah.
Like someone like him and like say Illy, they could just put out a song and it'll be added to major rotation because of the heritage that those guys have got. And you look at someone like 360, he was obviously huge and had all that support, and then they stopped supporting him for whatever reason. Maybe he went too commercial. But someone like All Day, man, he will always have that core fan base, and he's done a good job at maturing with his audience.
Yeah.
So
big time.
he, you know, so he's doing more singer-songwritery stuff now because his audience probably don't want to hear about chucking tags and doing kickflips down the street. You know, they're more about that other stuff. And he's got more of an, you know what I mean? Like, so that's what he started off with. Like,
yeah. Here's a bit of a left of field kind of one for you, but do you have a wild story from the Exford Hotel?
From the Exford Hotel? With the Exford Hotel? Which one's that?
The Exford Hotel is it's the one on the corner. It's Russell and Little Burke. It's got the latest opening bottle shop in the CBD. Opens till like 3 a.m. It's like a now
I don't even know. I've got lots of stories.
It's on the
man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah.
It's got a hostel above it. Like real old dingy place, but just kind of has been there forever.
I don't know, man. I don't know where you're getting your info from, but I can't think of a story from there.
No. The reason I ask is because I worked there when I first moved to Melbourne. I worked there, and it just
right, okay.
And it just seemed to be a place that everyone would have a story. It's kind of like it opens late, the bottle shop opens late. Like people are people meet there and kind of like disperse from there.
I've been there a bunch of times, but the reason why I probably don't have any amazing stories from there is because I've spent most of my life on Chapel Street in St Kilda, and the Windsor Bottle Shop is open 24 hours. So I've got plenty of stories about the Windsor Bottle Shop, but we would never have to travel to the city. So the Windsor Bottle Shop, so if we were in St Kilda, Elwood, Port Melbourne, anywhere there, you'd go to the Windsor Bottle Shop, and that was always open. And those guys had digital displays on their stuff. So if you were in there and it clicked over 11 o'clock, you were paying like $10 more for your slab of beer than you were 1 minute before
tick.
that. It'd just go tick, and that was it. Yeah. And they'd have security guards on there. Man, I got plenty of stories about there. But yeah, the one in the city, I have been there.
Yeah.
But we didn't need to travel that far. Generally.
No, that's a really good point.
I was racking my brain. I'm like, well, I don't know, man. Did I do a nudie run through there or something? I don't know. Like, I got the footage. No, I do know that place. And it's a sick joint that's always open. But in the city, it's a lot easier. You can find bars that are open more so, you know?
Yeah. All right, last question. Where would you like to see the 3,000 podcast go to? Like, what are some ambitious goals that you got for it, if any?
So that's the thing, man. Like I don't have a business model with this. I don't have a business plan. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. And it's kind of choosing its own direction, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I'd obviously like to get it to the point that it's self-sustainable and I don't have to fork out money from my own pocket to keep it going. Yeah. That would be the overall goal, I think. And hopefully, I don't want to change much of what I do. So again, to get to a point where I could have somebody help us with the behind the scenes stuff, like I do everything 100% myself, which is cool, but it is what it is. And I think I could potentially produce better content if I had someone that would give me a hand with that sort of stuff down the track. Yeah. But man, I've got no intentions of doing it like, for a big company or getting major support from anyone, because I think that would stifle the creativity of it and potentially push it in a direction that I don't want it to go. Yeah. So I just want to stay independent, keep doing what I'm doing. Hopefully one day it'll pay for itself and I don't have to. That's the goal, I think. But I need to sit down with someone like O1 and get him to help me write some goals and a plan, because that kid's a lot more driven than I am. Even though he's like 20 years younger than me, he knows what he wants. And so, I probably do need to figure out some sort of a goal, but I don't know, man. I'm just going to keep doing it. Like, I want to get to 100 episodes by the end of the year, which I'm on track to do. Yeah. We're going to release some music through the podcast as well, which I haven't really talked about yet. I want to work with a lot of past guests on other creative projects as well. So that's kind of cool, and build a creative hub sort of within that community as well, man. Yeah.
But just kind of building it organically and just seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I've never paid for a reel, I've never paid for a share, like, I don't know, like the Instagram, monetize whatever. I've never done any of that. I want to keep making content. And the whole idea, man, like, I just want to make stuff that I would want to consume. And if I want to consume it, hopefully other people do. And every time I have a different guest on, the Instagram grows, the social medias grow, the following on YouTube grows, and all that sort of shit. So that's just the plan, man. Just keep grinding it out. Yeah. And it's cool because at the start, there's a lot of people that I'd asked to come on the show and they would sort of decline or not respond. And so now that it's got, and now people are coming around, and there's very... No, I'm not saying they're reaching out, but some people are like, okay, I'll do it now. Yeah. That sort of thing.
That makes sense. That's just how the market works. People got to see something before they want to do something most of the time.
For sure. I think that they wanted to see the final product before they would say, "Yep, I'll do it." Yeah. Man. And I'm just gonna keep doing it until people can't not notice you. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
become undeniable.
You just keep doing it. Because I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be a bit flash in the pan with this. I think the whole podcast space is very new, and everyone's got a podcast, as we know, we both do. But I think a lot of people won't be there and aren't prepared to put in the long work, long hours and hard work that it'll take to be there when, what'd you say? It's like a bubble, when the bubble bursts,
When the bubble bursts, baby. Yeah.
It will.
It all comes crashing down.
For sure, man.
Do you have any big guests that are coming up that you want to give a little, tease for now, or you want to keep that close to chest?
I've got a guest who I've been trying to get on for a long time, and eventually, after bumping into him at a few social gatherings, which then again shows you that it is worth going out and doing that, that sort of stuff. He came up to me, he's like, "Man, I will do your podcast." So that was cool. He's coming up at episode 88, and we've penciled him in for episode 88. And that's all I'll say. But that's someone who's probably one of the most requested guests. So that's coming up soon.
Are you allowed to say what subculture?
It's from the hip-hop realm, definitely.
Okay.
Someone who is an iconic person in the Melbourne and, if not Australian, hip-hop scene. So that's coming up, episode 88. That's the clue.
Beautiful.
So that's coming up. Man, I've got heaps. Like, I've got so many people that I've already recorded and so many booked in that, the list is long. The list is long. So
there's plenty to look forward to.
There's heaps, man. Heaps. There's going to be 2 episodes a week, for the foreseeable future until my partner tells me to spend more time.
Oh, I love it.
That's it, man. Yeah, I'm even thinking about getting a bed so I can stay here in the studio, but I don't know.
Safer that way, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Maloney, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast today. Thank you for chatting. Thank you for giving me your time. Man. And I'm fucking keen to see what else you got cooking.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right. See you, Maloney.
Cheers. Bye.
All right, guys, that's it for my chat with Maloney. Again, please go check out his podcast, 3000 Podcasts. He's doing really great stuff, having really great conversations, and just like doing really like it's organic and it's curious and it's interesting and it's it's the kind of stuff that I really fuck with. So big fan of what he's doing. So please go check him out. And if you want to support my show, please subscribe to this channel. Throw me a like, throw me a comment wherever you're listening or viewing. Interact with me somehow because it's all going to help in the algorithm. That's going to help me grow, and I'm going to be able to get bigger, cooler, more interesting. Not that anyone is cooler than Maloney, but I'm just going to get different guests on. So yeah, it really helps. So anyway, that's it for me, guys. People's Champ signing out. Hope you have a great day, evening, night, wherever you are, and sending love and light, and I'll speak to you soon. Let's go.